Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again. After coming back from my very brief interlude for Diablo 4, I wanted to make something with Echoforge and kind of turn it into a big pile of memes and see what would come out the other end, and it's actually not that much of a pile of memes. So Echoforge is one of the newer items from the endgame bosses. It is along the same sort of trope as Starforge, Voidforge, except it is pure chaos, and then it's got some like big up and down rolls with life, area, attack speed. So if you get a good roll, it can actually be a pretty decent weapon. It's been tough to sort of like think about what you can and can't do with this thing, but after playing it on this character, I've concluded it's a little bit under appreciated and actually quite sleeper strong. So it's got a pile of chaos damage on this character. I am scaling chaos. It is an occultist and it is charged dash. So a few weird things there together, but as well as Echoforge being a bit underappreciated, I think charge dash is still a bit underlooked for clear, at least anyway. It is one of the nicest skills I tried in this situation. I did initially want it to be charge dash because, I don't know, people have been like, hey, I haven't seen charge dash in a while, so I went, okay, and did that. But I did also try out a few other skills, just while the character was fairly well built, and charge dash still felt better than most of them for most content out there. It's not going to be a very good uber bosser because it's a very weird jank and tough skill to maneuver around with, but for everything else it's actually pretty solid. And once you've got a good melee character up and running that can kind of scale generically, charge dash is something you may want to try just to see if it feels right for you, because it is actually a pretty decent skill for like speed, clearing, and just kind of overall feel. But the challenge with this character and for charge dash and for Echoforge is scaling enough attack speed, damage, and then area as well. So it starts out with a bit of area if you've got a good roll, but then I went Occultist with power charges, scaling area off of Occultist, and then went Badge of the Brotherhood with frenzies, trying to get some extra damage and attack speed from the frenzy nodes. I went with an Elegant Hubris, which gives all kinds of different stuff in the usual location next to Necromantic Aegis. There's spell damage, there's crit multi, you can have damage per frenzy, damage per power charge. So a lot of the damage scaling can come from there, but I also went to 12 socket cluster jewels that just have a lot of generic damage and attack speed. So we've fixed quite a lot of attack speed, a lot of damage through clusters and through an Elegant Hubris, and then just kind of ended up making a bit of a paper thin character. Is the unfortunate reality, because when I'm really unsure about something, and Echoforge plus charge dash I was really unsure about, I kind of have to go from an all-in on DPS standpoint and then see what's left afterwards. There wasn't much left afterwards because it ended up being something like 3k life with no real defenses to speak of, but once I got to level 90 and started doing like high tier red maps, it didn't feel great, so I did have to fix it up at least a little bit. Got an Arctic armor, fixed accuracy that I needed to fix, and then also started using a fortify in my main link, and ever since then it became pretty damn solid build. Like, it's not huge on defense of course still, but with the damage and the speed that it's got, it started to just blast through maps like nobody's business with the way charge dash is for speed, with the occultist explosions and scaling some area. It ended up taking me from 90 to 94 in like a couple hours. It was quick as fuck, and I think you could easily still build charge dash into something a bit better for thickness wise, which is probably where it's lacking in this type of a setup, and you could also probably build an Echoforge into much bigger DPS wise with something else. Doesn't have to be an occultist, can be pretty much any of the usual melee sort of things, like a Slayer, could be a Raider, could be a Berserker, you know what I mean. And it's actually got quite a lot of power behind it that just doesn't really look very obvious, because it's just a bunch of chaos damage on it, but you can combo it with Covenant and then start scaling all kinds of chaos damage, as well as withers. And once you've got lots of wither stacks going, once you make sure the enemy's fully shocked, you've got some pretty big damage behind it. So it's character that I played for just a few days, but went pretty fucking far, DPS-wise and also mapping-wise, enjoyment-wise, and then ultimately did kill just normal bosses pretty damn smooth. Like, the character has, I don't know, 30 million DPS in the end, which is much, much more than I was expecting Charge Dash Occultist Echoforge to have. I thought it'd taper out at a few million, which is why I said for this type of stuff, when I'm unsure, I have to go kind of like all in on DPS and make sure that it wins on that front, because if it loses on DPS while being kind of thin, then what the fuck's the point? So this is the one Uber boss I tried, which was Maven, and I mean, I almost got her down, but it is just such an awkward playstyle to have to manage your charge dash, appearance, reappearance, channel, all that sort of shit, especially while being pretty squishy. So it's never going to be too good for the Uber bosses, because this type of setup needs to obliterate things instantly. So at the end of the stream, just had to throw in a sneaky rage quit. But like I said, most melee builds are going to suck at Ubers regardless. And if they're good at the rest of the game, then that's all there is to it. Still a fun, worthwhile build. But can't necessarily say this one's worthwhile, because it's probably going to be a bit tough to replicate. Either way, let me go ahead and show you what I've done with it so far. And you can draw your own conclusions about Echoforge. Here's our character at the moment, level 94 Echoforge. It's an emote frog with a Echoforge in his hand. And yeah, it's based around the Echoforge sword. So like I said, I think it drops off just regular Maven, maybe not Uber. I think it's just regular. And pile of chaos damage, and then it's got some big variable rolls. So the attack speed can be -16 to +16, life -200 to +200, and then the area from -40 to +40. As well as that, you can't deal any fizz or ele, so scrap all of your fizz and ele damage, it's just pure chaos. And then your chaos damage can shock. But yeah, it's got some pretty big variable rolls, so a decent roll. Maybe you can do a CI one, a CI version of these types of builds, and then not have to worry about life altogether. But a decent roll in general has some attack speed and maybe some area, if you're actually going for something with area on it. Life is then, you know, a good thing to have if you can get more of it, and if you're building a life character, but this one did not go very heavy on the life anyway. So this is a very good roll. I started out with a shiny Echoforge here, and since I had a bunch of disposable income from various other ventures, I put a bunch of divines into it until a good roll happened, and it took me 60 divines to get to this here roll. They're very hard to roll, so don't try this at home. Basically, only if you have a lot of money, or pick up an okay roll just for your own purposes, but divining it is pretty much a fool's errand. That said, after getting to this one, I no longer wanted to do any more on this one, because it's about as good of a roll as I can get for 60 divines. I then picked up this one for 2 divines, and then hit it with 1 divine, and this happened. So, still sometimes lucky. In any case, we have a pile of chaos damage to start with, and then using a covenant, you have a level 29 added chaos attached as well, which is close to maybe about 60% of the chaos damage on this weapon, 60 or 70%. So it's quite a lot of extra chaos damage for an added link, which means it's really tough to get away from using a covenant, I'd say, but entirely possible to just throw that away and instead scale all of the damage from the Echoforge itself. Awakened added chaos becomes a pretty powerful link if you don't use added chaos from Covenant. Otherwise, yeah, just all of the damage on here is enough to start with. We then use Crown of Eyes and start power charge stacking with the Occultist. Got all this other chaos bullshit and then the chaos explosions, but power charge stacking, so I went up to 9 power charges, which gives me good extra damage, but also crit multi, and a bunch of area. And then the classic impossible escape for Necromantic Aegis, and taking, as I mentioned, lots of different nodes. In this case, you can have spell damage, damage with power charge, damage with frenzy. You can either have minion damage if you do the minion nodes as well. Crit multi is good too, and this one also happened to have a bunch of attack speed. So attack speed, spell damage, attack speed, and then spell damage, and 10 frenzy on hit. So for Badge of the Brotherhood, you kind of need some sort of frenzy generation somewhere, and I've got none anywhere. Thus, something like this had to happen. But I did have a previous couple other ones, so there's going to be lots that maybe cost like 1 divine that have lots of damage nodes. But to also incorporate a frenzy on hit is pretty tough, and this is what I've landed on. I don't think I even need all of these attack speed nodes, but 15 for 1 point, fuck it, I went for it. So that's what's happening over here. And it is Caspero, so that we can ignore attribute requirements, which isn't massive in the build, but it can be. So far, I've just basically used a lot of my int ones for killing blows have chance to shatter, so I shatter everything guaranteed, and that means there's no corpses left behind, and it feels pretty good. And then I've used some for life nodes. Life nodes are a bit expensive at the moment, but if I filled out the rest of these strength ones with life nodes, I'd be sitting at something like 3.7k life, which is a bit nicer. But I decided to just, I don't know, say fuck it, good enough, and haven't finished the rest off. So I've done 2 clusters that I've kind of repurposed from the Varanastra character. They just have increased effect and attack speed with some other bonus stuff, but you alt regal these until something good happens. So any single time you see increased effect, you regal. Any single time you see 3 attack speed, you regal. And then eventually you will have the combo, because it's just the combo of those 2 that's very important, because that means that every small passive then has 4 attack speed and at minimum 16 damage. For 1 point, that's pretty good across the board. So all the way through these nodes, we've got 40 attack speed and 160 damage, and then whatever bonus stuff is going to happen, and it leads you to 2 jewel sockets. Likewise with this one over here, but also gives a bit of extra damage. So each one of these points is 20 damage and 4 attack speed. But for Varanastra, yeah, it's huge. For this, it's just decent, given that we start an occultist area. We're not really positioned well to be picking up stuff, and on top of that, our damage is chaos, so you got to be careful as to what you can and can't pick up, and you can't take like fizz nodes, can't take elemental nodes, etc. So just generic damage or chaos damage is what we have to do. And then also got a megalomaniac to help with some defense. We went enduring composure and just a bit of damage over here. Otherwise, all my jewels just do like crit multi and a balance of terror for inflicting withered after casting a despair. And yeah, crit multi other than that. So I do cast despair for wither and for its obvious despair purpose, but I've also got a blasphemy with punishment, just so that the chaos pops actually work. If you get a curse on hit and you're like one-shotting things, then your chaos pops aren't going to work very well. But if we have a blasphemy, then we at least fly around with everything around us blasphemed and do all our good chaos pops. So aside from that, I'm also using Arctic Armor, Sand Stance, Haste, and then Precision. So we've got a +1 power charge, Crown of Eyes, which set me back, I don't remember, 4 divines maybe. Despair, Precision, Leap Slam, Haste. Over here we've got our main setup of Charge Dash. Crit Strikes basically have to do something to fix crit, and if we're not doing something like Slayer or a crit chest, you have to use Crit Strikes. We've then got Power Charge on crit, crit damage, Void Manip, and Fortify. I previously had Pulverize here, which felt nice for area, but the lack of attack speed and then the fact that I didn't have Fortify anywhere did feel kind of bad, so Fortify ended up being just a better support for overall gameplay. We then have an Anathema, so I can fit all my curses in, Despair, Punishment, and Assassin's Mark. We've then got just some accuracy here, accuracy there, with accuracy and intimidate. Aside from that, using an immortal flesh just for a pile of life and some good regen. And then elusive boots. I tried to make elusive tailwind boots, but nothing really ended up happening. So just grabbed some Redeemer, one of the failed pairs of Redeemer Hunter boots, and just spammed crit reroll until some good stuff happened, and then fixed them up with like prefix cannot be changed. Once I just had basically the elusive and the movement speed, prefix cannot be changed, and then a veil orb, and then fix the suffixes, and there you go, just a pair of decent elusive boots. And that's basically it for the gearing. And then a totem setup. The totem setup, when all 3 totems are down, should be something like 10 million DPS, which is pretty crazy just for the totems by themselves. So it's War Chief, it's multi-totem, it's Protector, power charge on crit, void manip, and crit damage. Down here we have punishment attached to Awakened Blasphemy. Awakened Blasphemy just gives a bit more area, a bit less reserve, kind of shit. Blood and Sand, Arctic Armor, and then over here is Mark on Hit, Life Tap, Assassin Mark, and Frost Blink. In the end, yeah, pretty fun little character, and Echoforge itself, pretty damn nutty. Not sure I'd really recommend making it. You certainly could and get it to a certain sort of playstyle as I have, but it's kind of tough, especially with no defenses, and it is going to be kind of costly putting all of it together, I'd say. But Echoforge, under like a Slayer perspective, something like that, you can look at PoE Ninja, see what people are doing with Echoforge. I think there's some pretty good examples out there. It's honestly a bit slept on as a weapon, I think. And I think that's all I needed to say about the character and the build. Yeah, some good shit. Look out for more Echoforge stuff in the future. I might be playing it because it's still on the cheaper end compared to like a Voidforge, but still pretty powerful and kind of fun doing just chaos stuff instead of elemental. So yeah, I was going to also mention the MTX. Fuck, the most expensive supporter pack. Yeah, and then some Dark Shard, and Chronomancer thing. So yeah, good luck if you want to float. It's not cheap. Thank you very much for watching. See you guys next time.